3:47 a.m. The timestamp on the security footage I was never supposed to find. My name is Marcus Webb. I design buildings that outlast the people who commission them. 41 years old, partner at Webb and Callaway Architecture, the kind of man who measures twice and cuts once. My wife Elena used to say that patience was my superpower. Turns out she was right. She just never imagined I would use it on her. I found the footage by accident. We had installed a new home security system after a break-in 2 houses down. The installer, a kid barely out of high school, accidentally synced the exterior camera feed to my work laptop instead of Elena's phone. I discovered this one Tuesday evening when I opened my laptop to review blueprints and found a live feed of my own driveway. I almost called the company to fix it. Almost. Instead, I sat in the quiet of my home office, surrounded by scale models of buildings I had designed, and I watched. For 3 weeks I watched. And what I saw rearranged the furniture of my entire life. The car that showed up every Tuesday and Thursday night at 11 p.m. belonged to Derek Callaway. My business partner. My college roommate. The best man at my wedding 14 years ago. The godfather of my 9-year-old son, Caleb. He never came inside. That almost made it worse. He would park at the curb, kill the lights, and Elena would appear at the front door in the silk robe I had bought her for our anniversary. They would sit in his car for exactly 47 minutes. Then he would leave. She would come back inside, brush her teeth, and slide into bed next to me smelling like his cologne, which I had always just assumed was mine mixing with something in the air. I did not confront her. I did not confront him. I did what I always do, I studied the problem. I measured the angles. And I began to build. I hired a private investigator named Carol Park, a former federal agent who communicated entirely in text messages and never once asked me why I needed the information, only what kind. In 6 weeks she gave me everything: hotel receipts going back 22 months, text message logs, a timeline so precise it felt like it had been designed by an architect. Which, in a way, it had. 22 months. Caleb was 7 when it started. I remembered that summer because it was the one where I worked late every night finishing the Hargrove Tower project, the commission that had finally made Webb and Callaway a name people recognized. I had won an industry award that fall. Derek had stood next to me at the podium, shaking my hand in front of 400 people. Elena had kissed my cheek at the afterparty. They had been sleeping together for 4 months by then. The betrayal was almost elegant in its completeness. Here is what most men would do: explode. Confront. Burn it down immediately, loudly, in a way that makes them feel powerful for about 48 hours and then regret forever. I watched the security footage one last time, closed the laptop, and spent the next 6 months doing the opposite of exploding. I started with the business. Our partnership agreement had a clause we had written 15 years ago when we were still idealistic enough to think such things would never matter. Either partner could trigger a buyout if they discovered the other had engaged in conduct that damaged the firm's reputation. We had added it thinking about drinking problems, financial fraud, that sort of thing. We never imagined it would cover sleeping with your partner's wife. But the language was broad. Carol's documentation was thorough. I had a lawyer review everything. He looked at me over his reading glasses and asked if I was sure I wanted to proceed. Not yet, I told him. Keep this on file. Next I approached the firm's largest clients quietly, over lunches and coffee meetings, positioning myself as the primary creative vision behind our biggest projects. This was not manipulation. It was the truth. Derek was the salesman. I was the one who designed things that actually stood up. Most of our major clients already knew this. I just made sure they knew I knew it too. Then I waited. I waited the way you wait for a building to settle, the way you wait for concrete to cure. Patiently. With purpose. The hardest part was going home every night and acting like my life was normal. Kissing Elena on the cheek. Helping Caleb with his homework. Sitting across from Derek at weekly meetings and discussing load-bearing walls and zoning permits while knowing exactly what kind of man he was. I became an actor in a play I had written but had not finished yet. Elena noticed something was different but she read it as stress. She bought me a meditation app. I thanked her and never opened it. Month 4 of my quiet preparation, I had lunch with Victoria Hargrove, the woman whose family had commissioned our tower and who had since become a significant force in the city's development scene. She was sharp, direct, and had once told me over drinks that Derek reminded her of every slippery man she had ever had to fire. "Why do you keep him around?" she had asked. "He is useful," I had said. That was then. Over lunch I told her I was considering restructuring the firm. She asked what that meant. I told her it meant web architecture, singular. She set down her fork and looked at me the way people look at buildings they're thinking about commissioning. "When?" she asked. "Soon," I said. "I wanted you to know first." She signed a letter of intent for 3 new projects that afternoon. My lawyer reviewed it that evening. He stopped asking if I was sure. In month 5, Derek began to suspect something was wrong. Not about what I knew, but about the business. Clients were taking longer to respond to his calls. A project we had expected to win went to another firm. He brought it up in a meeting, running his hand through his hair the way he did when he was nervous, and I listened carefully and said all the right things about market cycles and staying patient. Staying patient. He did not even register the irony. I told Elena on a Wednesday evening in October, 14 months after I had first seen Derek's car in my driveway. Caleb was at his grandmother's for the week. I had planned it that way. I set a folder on the kitchen table while she was making dinner. She turned around, saw it, and something in her face shifted. Not guilt, exactly. Recognition. The look of someone who has been waiting for an alarm to go off and has finally heard it. "How long?" she asked. "Since July of last year," I said. "I found the security footage by accident." She sat down. She did not cry, which told me everything I needed to know about how tired she was of the lie. We talked for 4 hours. I will not detail all of it here because some things belong only to the people in the room. What I will say is that she confirmed everything Carol had documented, and she added one thing the investigator had not found: it had been her idea. Derek had not pursued her. She had gone to him. She had been lonely during the Hargrove Tower months, convinced I had chosen my work over my family, and Derek had been there, sympathetic and available. She said she had wanted to end it a dozen times but did not know how. "You could have just told me," I said. "I know," she said. And then, very quietly, "I was afraid of who you would become if I did." I think about that line more than any other. I told her I wanted a divorce but that I wanted to do it the right way, for Caleb's sake. No explosions. No social media spectacle. No lawyers turning our son's childhood into a deposition. She agreed immediately. We spent the next month working with a mediator to divide everything equitably, and I mean genuinely equitably, not the kind of fair that is actually a form of punishment. I kept the firm. She kept the house and primary custody with generous visitation for me. We were both good parents. We would both continue to be. She asked me if I was going to destroy Derek. "I am going to hold him accountable," I said. "There is a difference." I triggered the buyout clause on a Thursday morning. My lawyer sent the documentation to Derek's lawyer at 9 a.m. By 10 a.m. Derek was standing in my office doorway looking like a man who had opened a door expecting one room and found another. "You knew," he said. "For over a year," I said. He sat down. He looked at the floor. He did not try to explain or justify, which surprised me and, if I am honest, earned him a small measure of my diminished respect. "How much?" he asked. He meant the buyout. I told him. It was fair. Below market for his share but defensible given the clause, and my lawyer had made sure the documentation was airtight. He could contest it, but it would cost him more than the difference to fight it, and the details that would come out in discovery would cost him everything else. "I will sign," he said. "I know," I said. He stood to leave. At the door he stopped. "I am sorry, Marcus. For what it is worth, I know it is not." "It is not," I agreed. "But say it to Caleb someday." "Not now." "But someday, when he is old enough to understand what you took from him." "Say it then." He left. I sat alone in the office that now bore only one name on the door, and I allowed myself exactly 15 minutes of grief before getting back to work. I had 3 new Hargrove projects to staff. People in our industry noticed the restructuring but not its cause. What the public saw was a clean, professional split, two partners going separate ways after a long run together. Derek started a smaller practice. He did adequate work. He did not thrive. Elena and I co-parented Caleb with a kind of businesslike decency that our mediator later told us was rare. She moved 30 minutes away. We had dinner together as a family on his birthdays. It was strange and uncomfortable and exactly what our son needed. The thing about a patient revenge is that it does not feel like victory when it is over. There is no moment of triumph, no scene where the villain realizes he has lost while you stand over him holding all the cards. What you get instead is a quiet Tuesday morning, coffee going cold on your desk, and the understanding that you did what needed to be done without becoming something you could not live with. I did not destroy Derek. I just stopped protecting him. I did not punish Elena. I just stopped pretending. I did not burn anything down. I simply declined to keep building on a cracked foundation. Caleb is 13 now. He knows his parents are not together but he does not know why yet, and when he asks, we have both agreed to tell him the truth in simple, age-appropriate language. Not to protect ourselves. To protect him from inheriting the idea that adults are supposed to be perfect. Last spring he came with me to the groundbreaking ceremony for the new children's hospital my firm designed. He stood next to me in a hard hat 3 sizes too big for him and watched the first shovel go into the ground. "Did you design this?" he asked. "Every inch," I said. He nodded the way kids do when they are filing something away for later. Then he looked up at me. "How do you know it will not fall down?" I thought about Elena's silk robe. About Derek's car at the curb. About security footage and private investigators and 14 months of silence in a house that had stopped being a home. "You build it right the first time," I said. "And when you find out it was not built right, you take it down carefully and start again. You do not patch cracks. You rebuild from the foundation." He thought about this. "That sounds like a lot of work." "It is," I said. "But it lasts." The shovel went into the ground. The crowd applauded. Somewhere across town, Derek Calloway was drawing plans for a building that would be fine but forgettable. Elena was living a life she had chosen with her eyes open. And I was standing in the early morning light with my son beside me. Building something meant to stand. That felt like enough. That felt like more than enough. If this story moved you, hit like and subscribe for more powerful stories like this one. Drop a comment below telling me where you are watching from. See you in the next one.